This podcast is brought to you by Voice and Vision, bringing help, hope, and healing to individuals, families, and communities affected by mental illness, addictions, and disabilities in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Welcome to Untold Valor, a podcast with a unique focus on veterans, featuring stories of courage, recovery, perseverance, and strength. Listen to hear veterans share their perspectives on what it's like to battle mental health challenges, combat addictions, and overcome other adversities unique to those who have served.
Welcome into another edition of Untold Valor, Veterans Recovery in Action. Another best of coming your way here, this time from Season 3. And we are going to take a look at a few clips on this podcast episode from Myra, Darrin, and Kat. So first up is Myra. She's going to talk about why it's important for veterans to advocate for themselves once they leave service. Let's get into it. Myra, you're a retired Army officer, combat veteran of 22 years. We typically open up the podcast by asking you to tell us a little bit about your time in service and just a kind of little backstory on you.
Okay, well, not the unusual thing is my mother and father met in the military.
Okay.
So they met in Germany and they fell in love and got married. And then I've had my siblings, we were all born in different military installations and things like that. And from an early age, I always wanted to join the military. And after I got like around 17 or something, I said, I want to join the military. My mom and dad were like, no.
Really? They said no? Okay.
They said, absolutely not. So I said, okay, I'll fix you in, So I waited to like early 20s, and then I went in. And I've enjoyed it. I was enlisted and received many awards and things like that when I was enlisted. And I got recommended to go to OCS, done a lot of different things, deployed to Afghanistan in 2003, 2004, seen a lot of different things, lost some friends. I got injured over there myself. But the thing about it is with most veterans, transition comes back,
Right.
For some veterans who have survivor's guilt. Well, why me? What happened?
Sure.
And you have to deal with that, along with PTSD, other things.
And did you suffer for some of that yourself, Myra?
Oh, absolutely. I got a laundry list. And it's the thing about it is I tell people you can manage. I had to teach myself many things and advocate for myself from the VA to get what I needed for myself. So PTSD, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, the list goes on. But I implored the veterans to advocate for themselves because I had a therapist that tell me at the VA, PTSD can be cured. Oh, okay. No, it can't. You can manage it.
Manage, yeah.
And that's what we do with my unit to show, because all three of us, the other two members of the unit, are all combat veterans. So to show that you can manage things. And when you need a little maintenance, we encourage people to go seek assistance because, as veterans, we don't need no help. We need assistance.
Right.
Go get a little tune-up, mental health tune-up or whatever. Because that's the thing about it. Some people think, therapy, you drop in, you drop out, you drop in. But you got to do what you need to do to make sure that you're healthy and well.
Yeah,
and
very true.
That's our focus, is to make sure. And through Veterans Court, I think when I was still in the service, people gravitated to me, I guess, because of my nature and everything. I'm very nurturing. And I love people. And, when you experience certain things like loss and things in the military, it's hard to come to terms with, and it's hard to transition. And I think a lot of veterans still transition, like myself. I'm very productive, but you still transition because you want to find that sense of belonging and where you fit in and want to give service. Because 9 times out of 10 with veterans, when they get out, they want to give service. They want to do something to assist people or give back to the community.
Next up is Darrin talking about his traumatic experience he went through as a new medic in the service, something that many veterans can certainly relate to. So let's check out what Darrin had to say. So what we like to talk about is, and I'm reading here in your bio and discussion topic, that obviously you went through some mental health issues of your own. That's the focus of the podcast, is helping veterans, whether they're transitioning, back out of military into the civilian life, or it's been a number of years that they've been out of the service and they're still maybe struggling with PTSD or any kind of issues that, plague our veterans. So tell us a little bit, as comfortable as you feel, about some of the things that you kind of dealt with and where you kind of started to see your issues coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing, first and foremost, I'm going to lead off with this, and I think it's the most important thing is that with mental health, I am going to be an open book for the podcast as much time allows, just because I think the biggest problem is we don't talk about it enough. And whenever we don't talk about it, it doesn't get addressed, or other people maybe don't feel comfortable discussing it themselves. So I will be an open book, like I said, as much as I possibly can for this segment. So if we're looking at mental health overarching for me within my career, military wise, I think it really kind of started for me as a young medic, not having any sort of trauma experience or any sort of real experience, just from seeing people on the worst day of their life, right?
Right.
That first introduction, and I'm sure Ben can attest to this as well, that first, you never forget that first like critical patient. And for me, that was before I was an AGR soldier, so like an active guard soldier. I was an M-Day soldier, so 1 week in a month. And I think I was only 3 months in. I'm sitting on a gun line, and my platoon sergeant told me, hey, it's going to be pretty standard, easy day for you. Just sit out there and, take care of guys, and, don't let them ride you too hard, because I was a brand new medic to the Army.
Right.
So we're sitting out there, and 8 o'clock at night, we're packing up and getting ready to go back to the barracks. And all of a sudden, I start hearing people just screaming medic. And I grab my bag and I start walking down, because I've always just wanted to present myself as, composed whenever I hear that, because I never wanted to give off the perception that I was panicked or I was nervous. So I'm, strolling down this hill where my ambulance was sitting over watching the gun line, and people are just telling me I have to move. And I go flying down this hill. I come around an LMTV, which is a big truck for your listeners that might not be familiar with the military. And there is a soldier who I was kind of having some banter with back and forth earlier in the day. He wasn't feeling well, and he was an older gentleman, and he is just he's down, bleeding from his head. So right away, brand new medic, I have tunnel vision on his head, but thank goodness the training that I got. As much as I was focused on the head, my body still just went and did exactly what it was supposed to do. And I found absent pulses on him. So then at that point, I knew it was a cardiac issue. So I switched over to that and doing CPR. And it, I didn't know anything, I knew nothing. I didn't know how long was like standard to be working on somebody. So I just went to work, and we're waiting for range control. This is back before like AEDs were really mandatory on the post that I work on for medics out on ranges. So I didn't have an AED. All I have are my hands and my bag, and there was nothing in my bag that was going to help me. I didn't even have a pocket mask on me, just because, once again, I wasn't outfitted for the job. So fast forward, I work on the patient for 30 minutes. Like I said, this is a guy, I have an entire gun line circling around me, just watching me. And the pressure was extraordinary.
Sure.
But I did in the moment, I didn't realize that. My biggest thought was, I'm not letting a fellow soldier die during a training event on a gun line, and we're all supposed to be going home tomorrow. That was my biggest thought, was just get this guy to a hospital so that way they can do the life-saving things that they need to do, keep him alive, just get him back. 32 minutes exactly. I performed CPR until an AED comes out. We shocked him twice, got him on, got a rhythm back, and then got him on an ambulance that we had to meet out on a hardball road, because the ambulance would not come down the dirt path that we took. And then I rode to the hospital with him, and the rest is kind of history. So as I've gotten older in my career, I kind of realized how significant that was, and how much that really affected me, and the pressure I put on myself to perform. Because, like I said, I was a trained medic, but I wasn't an experienced medic. And I got a save, and I did something remarkable. Like the doctors were stunned whenever we got to the hospital. They didn't believe that I actually had worked on that soldier for 32 minutes.
Wow.
And we got him back with no brain damage. It was just incredible. He was coherent whenever we got him back.
That's amazing.
So once again, yeah. So fast forward to any other time later on in my career where it was time for me to perform, the amount of pressure that I would put on myself in those moments to be perfect, that was kind of where it started. And then I did military funeral honors as a full-time job, sometimes doing 4 or 5 funerals a single day, just putting vets into the ground, or and then presenting a flag to the next of kin. So all these things, they're not combat related early on in my career, but they still weigh heavily. And that's something I really want to push on too, is just because you don't have necessarily the combat experience, bullets whizzing by you, or mortar or rockets coming in on the fob you're sitting on, that does not mean that something traumatic in your life did not happen that affected you.
And finally, we have Kat, who's talking about her struggle transitioning out of service after being forced to retire due to medical reasons. Again, something that many veterans can relate to. Let's listen to Kat. Tell us a little bit about your past, your time in service, how it affected you, things of that nature.
Well, again, thank you so much for having me today. So you hit on kind of the most important things to me. I am a 4th generation veteran, so it is very much in the blood to serve. I say we got better over the years, but my great-grandmother served in the Army in World War II, and then my grandfather served in the Army in Vietnam.
Wow.
And then both my parents served in the Navy. And then, I got smart and I joined the Air Force. So I was very fortunate to be able to go to the Air Force Academy and study astronautical engineering and work as an engineer, and then eventually a pilot in the Air Force. And becoming an air refueling pilot was really fantastic. Really enjoyed traveling all over the world, and deploying a couple of times to the Middle East as well, and seeing what that was like firsthand. And then unfortunately started to have some medical issues, and ultimately ended up being medically retired from the Air Force. And that was definitely, not part of the plan.
Yeah.
I planned to make it a career. I loved being an Air Force officer. I still, to this day, think I was born to be an Air Force officer. And so, my commander even said, I know you bleed blue, but it was just not meant to be. And so then I was, getting out and trying to figure out what was I going to do next, and really didn't know. Knew I wasn't going to be able to fly, and really needed that sense of purpose and mission to continue. And I didn't think I was going to find it in engineering, and so did a lot of research and found social work.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, so just a typical story.
A little career change,
social worker.
Yeah, little gear change. Well, let me ask you a question, because I don't know that we've had this particular conversation piece on the show so far. So, many people transition out of the service, and obviously a lot of veterans struggle with the transition back to civilian life anyway. But from a standpoint of wanting to serve and stay as a career and being forced to transition, I don't know if we've had that conversation yet. Did that, kind of provide you with some unique challenges on just emotionally kind of working through that? Because obviously this is something that was in the blood, to your point, and that you wanted to do with your whole career.
Oh, yes, it was very much a struggle. And, everyone tells you that transitioning is hard. But it was much harder than I expected. I didn't want to leave. So, I compare it to a bad breakup. The Air Force broke up with me, and I had to figure out what I was going to do. And so, and especially not being able to do what I had done in the Air Force, and having to start all over, not just professionally, but personally.
Sure. Do you think that led you to maybe the social work decision? Do you think that had any influence maybe?
Possibly, but, Like I said, I felt very much like being an Air Force officer was number one to me. Obviously, I loved being a pilot and an engineer as well. But first and foremost was being an officer and leading by example and being supportive of the team that I was running was the most important thing for me.
Gotcha.
And so I definitely wanted to be able to continue to serve in another capacity. So since I couldn't serve in the military anymore, I will be honest, I really didn't know what social work was.
Nothing wrong with that, right? Well, you obviously learned because you got your master's degree, right?
I did. I was very fortunate actually to use VRNE through the VA, and they, approved me to go to Penn and get my master's, and spent 2 years at Penn learning an enormous amount of information and being able to do field work and getting that hands-on experience. It was quite the transition because a lot of us think, what's an easy way to transition out of the military is to go back to school. And I think that's true for some people. For me, it was the biggest culture shock I've ever experienced. Even though I had, traveled 15 different countries, I've lived in 15 states, but going from a male-dominated, conservative military organization to a liberal, woman-dominated educational arena.
Culture shock?
It was culture shock, to the nth degree.
Thank you once again for listening to this episode of Untold Valor. We've been doing these best of series as we've been retooling a little bit with the program. Got some great new guests coming up on some new episodes, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or whatever podcasting app you enjoy using. And as always, if you've got questions and need help, make sure you're reaching out to qualified professionals who can help you. A lot of tools, tips, and resources we provide through this podcast. Many of the guests also have provided. So check out the links in the show descriptions below and click on one of those links or reach out to the contact information and talk to the team at Voice and Vision. And we will see you next time here on Untold Valor. You've been listening to Untold Valor by Voice and Vision. We hope you found the information and resources discussed today helpful. As always, thank you for listening and for your support. Remember to stay connected with us through our various social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't forget to visit the website, voiceandvisioninc.org. That's voiceandvisioninc.org, where you can sign up for our blog and find free resources and information on upcoming events, webinars, workshops, and get support. You can also access our free help and hope guide for individuals and families struggling with substance use and addiction. If someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help because you and your life matter. Remember, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available to you at any time by dialing 988. We are all ambassadors of hope and recovery. And if you want to share your story, please contact us. Compeer Corps is also looking for veteran mentor volunteers and veteran participants. To find out more information about Compeer Corps, please call 610-541-0790. That's 610-541-0790. You can find all the links and contact information for the resources mentioned on today's episode by checking the description and the show notes section of your app. Thank you again for tuning in and for your support. Until next time, this has been Untold Valor.